ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another day in paradise. Hey, it's a wonderful day out there, and my God, so much happening out there, so much that we have to talk about today, and so much to cover. So, just the highlights. Today we'll be crossing over to South Africa, in Durban, where one of my very good friends, Iswar Ramlachan, has been bestowed upon a doctorate, and he's worked very hard in the African communities. But a sad news coming out of there is the 138-year-old mosque which has been burned down. So we'll bring to you glimpses from there. So we'll be crossing over to South Africa. We'll bring to you the updates from Queensland Parliament, what's happening there, and of course the power struggle with Premier Daniel Andrews, as he likes to extend the emergency powers. But of course, while all that is happening, we'll also be crossing over to US and looking at the latest developments there, and of course there's so many things that are happening locally here as well, and we've only got this little time together. But once again, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you on the show. It's wonderful to see you here all the time. Thank you so much. So do share the link around and ask people to join in, and of course if you have anything that you'd like to have included on the show, we'd most gladly do that. It will be wonderful. So talking about the day, as I said, it's another day in paradise. Let's look at what it's actually looking like. With that, we'd like to welcome Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. So the weather forecast for the rest of today is a maximum of 22 degrees. Brisbane area is mostly sunny with light winds. Chances of rain at 0%. Fire danger is high, and sun protection is recommended till 2:30 p.m. UV index is predicted to reach 6, that is high. Thank you very much.
And that's wonderful, for around this time of the year, because as we know, the UV index, when it does go out, it doesn't sometimes feel like that, but you will always burn. So, it is good that you should take care. Well, right now, let's cross over to our Parliament and get the latest from the Premier and our Health Officer. This footage has just come off now, so let's go and join and see what's been the update from Queensland Parliament.
100,000. All right, good morning everyone. All right, so in some good news overnight for Queensland, I'm very pleased to report that we've had 0 new cases. That is tremendous news, with over 8,000 tests conducted in 24 hours. But of course, as Dr. Young said, the next 10 days is very critical. So we need to make sure that as many people as possible, if they are having any symptoms, to go and get tested. Can I thank everyone who has gone and been tested? We still need more people to go and get tested, and I thank you also for your patience. There have been some queues. We know we have a number of clinics that have been set up across the southeast. I thank you for your patience, but it is very important during this time, if you have any symptoms whatsoever, to get tested. So we know that social distancing is the key to make sure that you continue your social distancing, that good hand hygiene, and hopefully we will get through this as soon as possible. Our testing turnaround is around 30 hours, and that's because of the large volumes that we are seeing, but it is wonderful news that we've had 0 overnight cases. Dr. Young will give us an update, but I just wanted to also mention that because we've got the Jeff Horn fight happening up in Townsville, some extra measures have been put in place by Queensland Health, and that is that Queensland Health will be greeting people coming off the flights into Townsville just to check that they have no symptoms. This is because we have a large number of people from Indigenous communities that are coming to the fight. It is very important that no one goes to the Jeff Horn fight. If you have any symptoms, you must stay at home. So we're putting in this extra level of precaution just to make sure that everyone is safe at that event. And of course, I'm going to wish Jeff Horn all the very best. I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier and then the Chief Health Officer, and we're happy to take any questions. Thanks, DP.
Thank you, Premier.
Well, we breathed another sigh of relief this morning to learn that there were no further cases of COVID-19 here in Queensland, although there, of course, is still a long way to go before we know we have controlled this possible outbreak. That leaves our total number of cases at 1,106. 18 of those are active. As the Premier said, we did 8,059 tests in the last 24-hour period. 6,278 of those were in the HHSs where we are concerned about the Youth Detention Centre cluster. I want to apologise to those who saw delays in getting testing, particularly at Redlands. Today we will open a further fever clinic at Gundapar in the Bayside, hopefully to relieve some of the pressure on the Redlands. I just emphasise that in terms of redeploying health resources from across the southeast, first and foremost, we've had to relieve a number of staff from the Ipswich Hospital Emergency Department who were potentially exposed there. We have also allocated significant resources to our hotel quarantine, which remain at near peak levels, and that has impacted our ability to stand up many more fever clinics, but we have extended the hours of those that are operating. The Chief Health Officer will outline in more detail early preliminary results from that genomic testing she has been talking about. Those early results indicate that the first case of the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre cluster had the same strain of COVID-19 as one of the women who travelled to Melbourne, as well as the diners at the restaurant thought to have acquired it from that person. That doesn't disprove the theory that they are related. It doesn't prove the theory either, because that strain, the B1125 strain, is the most common strain currently circulating in Victoria. Therefore, there could be other sources of that strain here. Further genomic testing will, though, be able to confirm if the two are indeed linked, we hope.
So no new cases overnight, so we still have those 5 original cases associated with the detention centre, staff who work there, 5 cases in their immediate household or immediate relatives, and we've had no community cases. It's still a little bit early, though, to be seeing those community cases, so it is really important that everyone with any symptom at all come forward and gets tested. And thank you to all of those people who came forward yesterday and got tested. So we'll get those results through today, and that will reassure us, I hope, that we've not had community transmission. We'll need to continue those testing levels for the next week to just make sure that there isn't a case that we've missed, because I'm beginning to think that is what has happened with this detention cluster. So we now have that early genome sequencing information. So it looks like this cluster has the same viral strain as one of the young women who went down to Melbourne. Now, as the Deputy Premier pointed out, that doesn't prove it. I need more information, which is being done over the next 24 to 48 hours to be able to prove it. But at this stage, it does look like they could be linked. But we don't have the case between the two clusters. So we've had the cluster related to that Melbourne Logan group of those 5 people, and the cluster related to the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, 10 people. There's a missing link between the two. So that's why it's so important that we do our absolute best to find every single case, because the cases we don't find are the ones that can lead to chains of transmission if we don't find them and then can't get on top of them and manage them. So thank you again to all of those people who came forward yesterday and got tested. Then we are doing a little bit of extra work up in Townsville just because of the event that's happening there on Wednesday night. I've just asked the health staff up in Townsville, could they please go to the airport and meet each flight that's coming in and just reaffirm with people that if they're unwell, that's not the time to be going to the event. So we'll also be making sure, and I know that those event organisers have an excellent COVID-safe plan in place, and we'll work with them if there's anything else they need to do, just in case there are people who were to travel up from Brisbane. I think the risk is very, very, very low. I really do. I think the numbers of cases here in Brisbane, you can imagine how many millions of people there are in Brisbane, and for one of them to have it and then to go up to Townsville, the risk is very low, but it's not going to hurt just to remind people of that who are travelling into Townsville Airport. Thank you.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio's Televised Live Update. Now, as we know that when we talk about those odd chances of one person, there was a complaint by someone who complained that here we are having this big fight and everyone's going to that, and they were disallowed. They could not have a birthday party gathering for a little while in the family, and they said, but as Dr. Janet Young mentioned, that all it takes is just one person. How do we find that one person? So always we have this balancing act whereby, sometimes people see that individual people did not get a permission while the big organizers have got a permission to host or hold an event of that size. Well, time will tell, and we will wait and see. But the key message coming out of there is another week or another 10 days until we really find out, and until any sort of restrictions may be eased, if at all. It will be eased if there is no more cases that are coming from, and the trend that she has identified with if she finds that missing link, as she has mentioned. Talking about the missing link, when we talk about the community and communities, and a lot has been happening, as we know about that another shooting in US of the black citizen. We will look at that coverage in a minute as well. So that's sparked a lot of but locally here in Australia as well, many times we see many people say racism, it's not here, it's, where in the days gone past, and then many people still argue that, it is here, and they still face that on a day-to-day basis. But when our leaders and our politicians, it's up to them, the onus is on them to make sure that they pass on a very good message of community cohesion, of unity, on one of everyone working together. And the press and the media has a very strong role in this. When you're reporting, rather than reporting that, a man of this descent or of that origin, just say a man in 20s, was charged with this. That's it. We are all the same, and we all here, unless, of course, it's a resident of another country who is not a permanent resident or anything here. So then we can say, foreigner or someone like that. But again, responsibility needs to be taken. I think the mindset needs to change, and it will, until and unless we start speaking in those terms that say everyone, and whenever we report or say anything, rather than say, do you know that another Indian, or do you know that another Muslim, rather than that, and there was a person out there who got caught with this. That's it. Why do you have to identify people with their, origin, color, race, or whatever? And one strong person in this field is Michelle Rowland. We know that she is a very strong advocate of the Indian community, and she is a good friend, and we have attended many functions together with her, and this is what she had to say in Parliament.
Not long ago, the Treasurer mocked Hinduism in this chamber. Then last night we saw on 60 Minutes, in all the glory of the Liberal Party Victorian engine room, people of Indian background being referred to using a term that is so degrading I won't repeat it. It exposes this government's shallow approach to a people and a country that gives so much to Australia and with whom we must build an economic relationship that's bigger and deeper. India is Australia's largest source of permanent migration, but the Liberals prefer insults above appreciating the contributions of Indian Australians and the compassion shown throughout COVID by different Indian communities in our suburbs. But it's not just the Liberals' ignorance, it's their incompetence. Nothing of note has happened to progress the recommendations of the epic Varghese report from 2 years ago. India's share of our exports has fallen to a 17-year low. And don't forget the big call by Tony Abbott and Andrew Robb to deliver a free trade agreement by 2015. Meanwhile, the pandemic has seen offices like mine inundated with Australian citizens and Indian nationals desperate to be reunited with their loved ones. We're at the end of August and the Prime Minister is only now being reported as asking for ideas on how to help stranded Australians get home. If the Liberals were as focused on building the India relationship as they are with insulting Indian Australians, we would all be better off.
And very well said there, Michelle. And as we know, that she's very passionate about the Indian community. So in Parliament, the federal member for Greenway, Michelle Rowland, condemned the offensive Liberal insults about subcontinental Australians. And she says that it exposes this government's shallow approach to people in a country that gives so much to Australia and whom we must build an economic relation, and that is a bigger and deeper, Ms. Rowland said. And as we know, she has attended functions at the temples, at the gurudwaras, and she's been out in the community and always helping and supporting. But the thing is, when it comes to this kind of messages, we need all our politicians to be behind the communities. Of course, it does not go to say that the laws of the land must never be, degraded. It should always be upheld. If someone does the wrong, hey, there is systems in place. There is a law and order which must deal with them. And of course, those things cut across the board with no one excluded, everyone. So with that, but no community should be singled out and obviously, when we look at India, we know that there's so much talk of the economic ties with India and the bilateral trade and whatever. So many trade delegations go, and there's so many organizations who are working on that field of building up that relationship. And then we have things like this happening, which is not very good. Well, right now, let's go to Victoria. To New South Wales before we go to Victoria.
Pleasingly, even though it was the weekend, we had over 20,000 tests in the last 24-hour batch with 3 cases, 2 of which are in hotel quarantine, so just the one in community transmission, and Dr. Chant will outline details of that. So this is a pleasing result, but we know that there is community transmission lurking in and around southwestern and western Sydney, and the reason I'm out here today is to really thank community leaders and community members for coming forward and getting tested, but we need this to continue. I especially want to thank our local community leaders, including individuals like Dr. Doan, who is a medical practitioner, a doctor at Fairfield Hospital and has worked in the region for 20 years, who is getting the message out to his community about the importance of testing, and individuals like Mrs. Jabor, who works with our police as a multicultural community liaison to make sure the messages get out to all of our community leaders to really convey that on the ground to community members. It's really important for us to really deal with any community transmission that we're not aware of. New South Wales, to this point in time, has got the balance right. We're able to go about our business in a safe way whilst controlling the virus, and I want to thank everybody involved in that process.
So as she mentioned there, that the message should go out, and it should go out via community members and community leaders. And that is what is expected, because, we really need to make sure that, we always portray that message of cohesion, within the communities, and it is up to our leaders to portray that message as well. And of course, he did say, well, now when I've talked about, one of the news today was the news of the mosque that burnt down. Well, the mosque is in Grey Street in Devon. I have actually seen the mosque. I've got photos of the mosque there as well. So I'll show you the photo of the mosque. It is a very large mosque there in Devon. That's on the corner of Grey Street. So a massive blaze engulfed the 139-year-old mosque in South African city of Devon. The cause of the fire at the Grey Street Mosque, one of the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, is not immediately known. So it has not been identified. But Faisal Suleiman, chairperson of South African Muslim Network, said it is believed to have been started in one of the 7 staff flats located above the mosque. and may have been caused by an electrical fault. That's what's said at the moment. It's not confirmed. It's presumed to have been accidental and not have been any foul play, Suleiman said to the news agencies. But the investigations are underway, and then and we'll see what comes out of it. I'm going to show you a little bit of the footage of the actual blaze. So if you look at the mosque when it's in its full glory, and here are the scenes of it burning. This mosque is actually right opposite the markets. And when I was there, they were talking about taking down the markets, and there was a big uproar about all the market vendors who've been there. Some of them said their family generations have been holding stalls in this market, and they would not let that market come down. So, that fire is quite substantial. So, that's the Grey Street Mosque in Devon. And this is from someone's mobile camera. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen that the Grey Street Mosque, which has been one of the oldest and biggest in that part of the world, 139-year-old mosque in the South African city of Devon. Devon itself is a very, very nice, a wonderful city, and it has been very distressing to see what's happening, with that blaze. It is quite unfortunate as well. But also when we look at South Africa, a very good friend of mine, a very kind young gentleman, very religious person, and his name is Iswar Ramlachlan, and he has been conferred the doctorate by the King of KwaZulu-Natal, and he has been bestowed. He works in that community as well. So, not only the Hindu community, Sivanand the trust he works with Swamiji's, and he is the vice president of GoPure International. And we have said many functions and events together. So he's from Devon as well. And yesterday, he was conferred a doctorate, an honorary doctorate for his work in the community. So let's hear from the Zulu Kings and from the kingdom when they talk about him, because he could not be present at the graduation ceremony, but supporting the good wishes to him.
Professor S.C. Shabalala, Professor M.R. Ngalo, Reverend Ivan Naidu, Dr. Tolima Katini, Dr. Mbonga Nzama, Nazareth Baptist Church, Nkosi Mqoqi Ngcobo of Amakati, and other Amakosi that are present, Mr. Ramlachlan and your family, MEC Ravi Pillay. On behalf of my people, I am delighted to send my message on the auspicious occasion being the graduation ceremony of Iswar Ramlachlan Mapega Zulu. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I am unavailable to attend. The dictum that people of exceptional leadership, intellectual and spiritual power are ahead of their time rings through for Mapega's life journey we are celebrating. Indeed, over the years, Mapega has become an additional member of our family, whom I always refer to as Indodana Yetu, our son. His commitment and promotion of social cohesion, leisure conservation, and respect for everyone's cultural heritage and religion has earned him our respect. When I adopted Ishwaram Lashman, I gave him a name of Mapega Zulu. The adoption of dedicated and diligent subjects in the Zulu kingdom was always done by my predecessors. King Shaka, King Tsejayo, and King Dinizulu, to name a few. Other nations or countries have what they call foreign legions, in which non-residents serve as soldiers. In Zulu, and indeed African culture, we do not have a separate chamber for foreigners. When we welcome them into our fold.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave that report there, and it is wonderful to see my very good friend Ishwaram Lachlan being recognized in that manner. And as if you meet that gentleman, so he does such a great work out in the community, but he's always so humble and so soft-spoken, and it is wonderful to see him being honored in that manner, and especially working within the multicultural communities, trying to bring together that cohesion of, in whichever country, wherever we live. Of course, in today's day and world, there's no country where, there's only people of, homogeneous nature. There's people of all different communities, living together, and the goodwill needs to be spread. And as the kings mentioned there, that they had adopted him into the family. And he also works with the Sivananda Trust. He works with the temples and the Swamijis. So he does a wonderful work out there, and he's also the vice president of Gopio International. Of course, he works with Gopio South Africa as well. Now, the news that we were talking about, the other disturbing news that's come out of the US is about this shooting. And of course, I believe there will be a lot more. We will get in the next few days probably a lot more that would be reported. But I must warn that some of the footage there might distress some of the viewers.
Wow.
So that's the footage that has come out of there. It speaks for itself, and we will, of course, no doubt, we will hear about all the things that's happening with that. But right now, let's take a very, very quick commercial break. And would like to thank our sponsors for this segment, GlobeNet Realty.
GlobeNet Realty. ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globenetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज अवर वर्ल्ड।
And real estate is definitely the world. Well, right now, let's take a quick look at some of the headlines.
Delivered a late-night defence of his plan to extend the state's emergency powers for another 12 months. Daniel Andrews has taken to Twitter saying the measures are needed to keep people safe. But the state opposition says it won't back the move, describing it as a power grab. New South Wales authorities are still very worried about the level of community transmission in parts of Sydney. The state has recorded 3 new COVID-19 cases. 2 are returned overseas travellers in hotel quarantine, and 1 is a close contact of a previously confirmed case. And residents in southeast Queensland are coming to terms with recommendations they should now wear face masks whenever in crowded places. Health officials have issued the directive after an outbreak of COVID-19 in that part of the state. And the South Australian government has announced its State Control Centre will double in size to help with the pandemic response. The Premier is warning the economic recovery will take years. Border restrictions will be high on the agenda when the state's Transition Committee meets later this morning. And violent protests have broken out in the US city of Kenosha in Wisconsin after police shot a black man multiple times while responding to a domestic incident. Jacob Blake is said to be in a serious condition in hospital. The state governor has condemned what he calls the excessive use of force.
The excessive use of force, and as I mentioned before, that is not the last of it. We will hear more about that as we move along. Well, what happens, when you are in power, when you are in a place of authority and you need to have your facts together, and if you don't have the facts on you?
Can the Minister tell us today how many residents of aged care facilities funded and regulated by the Morrison government has passed away since he failed to provide that answer?
Minister for Aged Care and Senior Australians, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Gallagher, for the question, and can I at the outset express my sincere condolences to every resident's family who've lost a loved one during the pandemic into aged care. Can I also say that I should have had the data on Friday, and I apologise for not having done that. To my colleagues who I have successfully taken the attention off what it should be, which is our efforts to combat the virus, but also to the Senate, I should have had the information, and my fault, my responsibility, and I take full responsibility for not having that information available to me at the time. Mr President, sadly, nationally, since the commencement of the pandemic, there's 335 Australians who have passed away in residential and in home care. Mr President, there have been 7 home care recipients and 328 residential care recipients who have passed away.
So, getting your homework done is always so important to remember the school days. Yes, you're going into Parliament, you have to have your numbers with you. So looking at news, I know that news, current affairs interest everyone, and everyone loves to, be part of the news channels and have the news. So how young is too young to have your own newspaper?
Hi, my name is Susie Pollard and I'm 10 years old. I go to North Melbourne Primary School and this is my cat Cloud. I'm writing my science section and I've written that if you mix baking powder and vinegar together, then it will make a fizzy thingy, and if you do it on top of your cat's head, you will get scratched. I started the COVID catch-up because my mum had a typewriter and I was having a lot of trouble keeping up with everything that was going on, so I thought other kids might feel the same way.
I'm Kate Howell, I'm Susie's mum. I'm pretty proud of my 10-year-old girl. She's a really interesting kid, and being at home all the time hasn't been so easy for her.
I just got an email from someone who must have read my newspaper and they sent in a really good article, so now I'm typing it out to put in the newspaper.
What's the article about?
Like all the masks and stuff.
That's pretty exciting. People must be starting to read it.
Yeah. I sort of wish I checked a bit earlier because it was from Saturday.
The COVID catch-up is coming out sometimes twice every week, which is up to issue 6, and it's been really exciting to see how people are supporting it and how excited our friends are when a new issue comes out, particularly, if they've contributed something.
The good old Olivetti and the typing days, yes, fond memories of the typewriter, the ribbons, and of course the carbon paper. Well, some people might never know about all of those things. Well, right now when we're talking about, I'll show you that glimpse of the mosque burning in Devon once again, but right now we'll go to the Christchurch where that historic court case, the court hearing's been taking, and it's wonderful to see, the Muslim community coming together and of course, making a statement, and many of them have said that thank you for bringing us together under those extreme circumstances.
I constantly try to imagine how my beloved Atta felt at the moment of the attack. How he faced the shooter with his chest, armed only with his courage to protect others. What was in his mind when he realized he is departing this life to his last journey? How is life going to be without him being around? Losing my beloved son is like feeling the pain of labor in my womb again and again. It is like losing a big part of me forever. Every time I look in the eyes of his daughter, you left fatherless at the age of 2. His wife you widowed, his sister, his brother, his dad. May you get the severest punishment for your evil act in this life. And in the hereafter, we know that Allah is the most just. You transgressed, and you thought you can break us.
And of course, we know that he has not sought any legal representation. There was a legal representation in the very beginning, but afterwards he said he will represent himself. He is yet to make his comments, after the hearing. Well, right now we'll go to Victoria, where we now Premier Daniel Andrews is making a bid for the emergency powers to be extended for 1 year. And of course, that has come with some people saying that it's a good move and others criticising it.
Now, in terms of the state of emergency, each of you know that expires on the 13th of September. The Public Health and Wellbeing Act, an act of the Victorian Parliament, provides for a maximum of 6 months for the running of that state of emergency. It can only operate and function for 6 months. That is the legal instrument that allows, for instance, rules about face masks, rules about COVID-safe work plans in large workplaces and small. That's the legal instrument that, for instance, sits behind density limits in pubs and restaurants and cafes, or things like a positive person, someone who's got this virus, being required to isolate at home. So we simply can't have those important rules and the legal framework that sits behind them. We can't have that end on the 13th of December because this virus won't have ended by the 13th of next month. The important thing here is that before the 13th of September, and I'll leave it to that working group to determine exactly how and the presiding officers when the Parliament will sit, but we will extend the state of emergency provisions within the Public Health and Wellbeing Act for a maximum of a further 12 months. So that means it'll be a total of 18 months, the 6 months that we've already been through, plus a further 12 months. There are a few other minor changes, but again, that bill will be made available at the appropriate time. I think we're going to engage with all parties in the Victorian Parliament quite soon to talk about those changes, and hopefully we can both have a very important agreement about how and when the Parliament sits, and then we can have an orderly process to make those necessary changes. That doesn't relate to the state of disaster. That doesn't relate to the rules, many of them that we are living under right now, but it is about making sure that even after the worst of this, the second wave has passed, there will still be, for a considerable period of time, it could be less than another 12 months, we'd certainly hope so. If a vaccine was to appear next year, well then many of those rules will not be needed. But we have to assume.
So, you know, the opposition has lashed out that this is a power grab maneuver, but, you know, looking at the success and planning, of course, you know, when you implement a plan in place, you need to have the time to follow that through as well. And that we have seen in many cases. You know, businesses are slightly different, but in many community organizations as well, you know, many times that continuity, because as soon as the new the team comes in, you know, sometimes the direction changes, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. So, you know, what do you think of that move there? Whether it is just a, you know, a good move to make sure that, you know, that emergency power has put extended for another 12 months, that would make it the total of 18 months. 6 months that they've already had, and he's asking for another 12-month extension, or is it just something, you know, as a power move, as the opposition is saying? Well, right now, let's take a look at some of the events, or some of the events that have been cancelled. Special charter flights are available from Brisbane to Delhi on the 29th, and call Corridor Travel, you know, the phone numbers there, 1300 521 139. Gurudwara programs are happening, but of course always check with the management as to what can be done and how many people can come on. And the Queensland Vedic Cultural Centre's planned celebration and the Havan on the 30th has been cancelled. So until further notice, so it's been postponed under the current rules and regulations. National Health Foundation of Australia, under the guidance of Vasan Srinivasan, and there's so many functions that are taking place, so many virtual events and webinars that would be taking place. So, you know, if you get a chance, please join in. Because as we know, in times like this, mental health is very important. It is a concerning topic and a subject, and we must, you know, if we get a chance to log on to those webinars and seminars and take part. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to say goodbye. It's been wonderful having your company. And as I said before, that I'll finish off by showing you once again. Here's that mosque in Grey Street in downtown Devon. I've been to that mosque, and it's on that corner. And here is the footage of the fire that took place. And that footage there has been the courtesy of Rita Abraham, the correspondent from there, and also a member of GoPio. And as we know, Ishwar Ramlachan yesterday was conferred a doctorate, and of course for the work that he does in the community. And many of our GoPio chapter members throughout the world, wherever they are, be it Paris, where they were awarded a big a certificate just lately from the government of India for the work that they are doing within the community. As we know, GoPio is the largest diaspora organization for the people of Indian origin, with having chapters throughout the world. And of course, many new things are being planned at the moment, because many things had to be put on shelf because of the COVID-19 situation surrounding the world. And of course, the convention had to be put off as well. So, but stay up to date. And if you are not a member of the local chapter, please do become. And of course, the local chapter here puts out the India Day Fair. And as we know, this year we did the virtual one. And last time I saw there was over 75,000 views. So 75,000 views is quite a lot of viewers for that post that we did from here. So we covered the India Day Fair virtually, the way it took place this year. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, I need to say goodbye, because I'm very mindful of the time. There's still so much that we can talk about. We're looking at probably extending this show into a few other segments as well. And very soon we'll be introducing some of the other segments that we will be introducing, or we'll be bringing to you from here. So once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking part, for joining in every day, and for your beautiful comments, and for sharing with your groups. And I'd also like to place on record the special thanks to all the Facebook groups, Messenger groups, and WhatsApp groups who share the link with your friends, and who allow us to share the post on your pages. So, really, really appreciate that. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Please all have a good day, but most of all, stay safe.